today's webinar. A little bit of housekeeping before we actually kick this off. For those of you just coming on, we are going to take audience questions. So please utilize the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Ask questions as they come up, but we will be addressing those at the conclusion. So with that, I would like to turn this over to Force Family Office's CEO, Steven Saldstein. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Callie, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We greatly appreciate you taking time out every day to be with us. We have a fantastic panel about the metaverse and just understanding, both the basic level of what the metaverse is and also quite sophisticated applications in the business world. With us today, we have three esteemed panelists: Jason Southern, who's head of segment for professional visualization, virtualization for NVIDIA; Kevin Smith, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Escher Cloud; and Benny Willen, who's CEO of Cloudalize. So to start off, gentlemen, I would appreciate perhaps if you could just introduce yourselves. And then I'm hoping, because we had over 500 people sign up for this event, and so there's definitely a varied level of expertise. And so at least for the folks that are really here to understand the very basics about the metaverse, as we start and kick off this presentation, I'm hoping you could explain really what the metaverse is, maybe give some real world examples of what perhaps it'll become in 10 years, and what industries will most benefit from this new paradigm. Kevin, do you mind starting?
Yeah, sure. So just as an introduction, so Kevin Smith. So professionally, I'm a creative technologist. I work a lot in the creative and technology spaces, and I'm currently acting CTO at a digital technology infrastructure company called Escher Cloud. Did you want me to carry on with the intro or jump into the metaverse bit? Do you want to pass around first, Stephen?
Sure. Why doesn't Benny introduce himself, and then Jason, and then you can go into the intro, please.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a co-founder at Cloudalize, and Cloudalize actually designs, installs, and manages private clouds for customers and partners such as Escher Cloud here, always with a GPU. So that means we don't build on top of the public cloud, but actually use any of the shelf available hardware to really optimize a cloud and achieve very significant, up to 10x better performance cost ratios, as we have achieved here for this specific project to host NVIDIA Omniverse on top of the project we're doing with Escher Cloud. So in general, Cloudalize has about 100 customers, both mainly in Europe and North America, usually in cut-heavy industries such as engineering companies, manufacturing companies. For example, Stellar is a large customer based out of Tampa in the US. And here in Belgium, Lantis is a customer. They are building the largest public infrastructure work in a century, I believe it was, here in Belgium on our platform. So basically, we enable CAD designers to work together more efficiently, even though they belong to different organizations and are geographically dispersed. That's Cloudalize in a nutshell.
Benny, it's important to point out that you have great expertise in this industry, and actually you were the first company that you founded was the first company to allow for graphics to be stored in the cloud, and that was quite the accomplishment.
Thank you for reminding me, Stephen. Indeed, we were the first NVIDIA cloud partner back in 2012. Offering a GPU from the cloud is actually quite a recent development. Virtual workspaces have been around for 40 years, but adding the GPU, that's thanks to massive efforts of NVIDIA there. And we were the first ones to make NVIDIA Grid, a specific platform NVIDIA developed to offer a GPU in the cloud, to make that compatible throughout our cloud back in 2012. So that's right, Stephen. Thank you.
It's a fantastic accomplishment. And Jason?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Good afternoon or good evening, everybody. So I'm Jason Southern. I'm responsible for visualization, virtualization, collaboration, simulation, and many, many other Asian words that are associated with this space at NVIDIA. My background is engineering, and what we're doing at NVIDIA is really continuing to pioneer accelerated computing. We started out in graphics. We started with computer graphics, very much in the gaming space. And over the past couple of decades, we've developed that beyond gaming and into professional visualization, professional graphics, design, engineering, into high performance computing, and now into the AI space. And the concept of virtual worlds, and which Omniverse plugs into, is underpinned by all of those technologies. And I'm sure we're going to touch on many of those points as we go through, not just what they are, but what it's built upon as well. And Kevin and Benny are critical to being able to deliver that to customers. We can create a fantastic platform, but we need people and organizations like those that Kevin and Benny are with to take that out to the customers.
Great. Can you just quickly just talk about the Omniverse as it relates to the metaverse?
Sure. So the metaverse has been a term that relates to virtual worlds. It's gained popularity in recent months and weeks, but really there's been many virtual worlds around for a number of years. In fact, any of us with teenage children will be well aware of a number of virtual worlds that are in place with Fortnite, Roblox, World of Warcraft, etc. But the Omniverse, what we're doing with the Omniverse is trying to bring that into the professional world, and it is intended for collaboration and creation of virtual worlds for the enterprise. Now, that doesn't mean to say that they wouldn't be able to integrate with those other consumer ones. Quite the opposite. Our intention is that Omniverse allows for easy integration, or relatively easy integration and collaboration with multiple virtual worlds. But it's a platform and a set of tools for developing and creating virtual worlds. We don't believe that there's going to be one virtual world. We think there's going to be many. There are many already today, and there'll be many in the future. And different organizations will want their own virtual environment because they want to do a particular thing in that virtual world. So they want control and the ability to manage that and develop for that. But you also want the option and the ability to integrate with existing infrastructure and existing solutions as well. So the Omniverse is not supposed to be and not intended to be a single platform to replace. It's there to allow for integration and collaboration with many, many other technologies as well.
You have a video, I think, that further explains what you're talking about. Would you mind showing it?
Yes, I do. And this is aimed at demonstrates some of the industries that have used the early access and now it's generally available. This is about what they've been able to do with the Omniverse platform today. So bear with me while I do a few clicks and we'll get started.
Where are you from, Misty?
I'm from a place called Omniverse.
There we go. So that's just a few examples of what some of the organizations we've been working with have done in Omniverse, both from a collaboration perspective and a simulation perspective. And you can see, that's the potential there to start with a single product and scale out, as you saw, to an entire planet for weather simulation and things like that. So It's a very powerful and very scalable tool. All depends on where you want to start and where you want to finish.
It is a proper analogy, almost like if you look at all the streaming services, right? If you look at Netflix and Apple and Amazon and all these different streaming services, your omniverse is what would connect them all and allow them to distribute whatever content they need to distribute out.
It's more than that. It's about developing that content as well and creating the content, bringing those tools together so that a designer, a creator can use the tools that they want to use, but collaborate with other people that are using a different set of tools, a different set of technologies, and have them brought together in that virtual environment. And then to be able to see in real time what it is that they're creating. It doesn't matter, you don't even need to be in the same physical place. You can be on different sides of the planet and still collaborate on the same environment in real time. And then to be able to simulate the environment that it's in. So, you know, what's the weather like? What's the sun like? Is it day? Is it night? Is it raining? What's the gravity like? Do I want to simulate an environment for a trip to Mars, a trip to the moon, a trip to Jupiter with a higher gravity? All of these things, because we can control the physics inside this environment, and it is true physics, we've got that the ability to manipulate that and control that. We can simulate any environment, and we can even change the laws of physics if we want to, because it's a simulation.
It's amazing. Kevin, what is Escher Cloud doing with the metaverse and ultimately the omniverse?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question. So firstly, I mean, for us, it's really interesting here, Jason and Benny talk about the way they talk about. So for a lot of people, the metaverse is, you know, like we've anecdotally talked about what Facebook have renamed themselves to recently as the meta. So what is that? So that's, you know, the consumer side. And what we're talking about today is professional and enterprise class side. What we see as an organization and myself as an individual is we've seen it with cryptocurrency, we've seen it with NFT, we've seen it with this change in democratization of wealth. We're getting to a point where, you know, the world is looking at a stateless society, and it's been driven by the people, and it's happening. And what we see the metaverse is like Jason said, it's multiple worlds within worlds upon worlds of people interacting. And the way that we see it all coming together is that at some point, you know, it's happening now just in the real world with people professionally and socially. Those barriers of professional, social identity, both business and consumer, they won't exist. Marketplaces will be created. Business will be done at a different scale. Connections will be made between people, expertise, just in time. One of the things that, you know, looking into Omniverse more and more, something that's very clear that from what we've seen is the simulation. So let's talk about physical simulation. You want to prototype a product in manufacturing, you have to build some test equipment, you have to prototype material testing, basic engineering structures. In the future, in the metaverse, and very much what NVIDIA's enabled the market, and I'll use that word a lot, is enabled, because that's what NVIDIA really do. They enable us to do things. Is they've given us the ability to create ground truth in a digital construct, and then allow us to deliver in the physical world using the digital as a proven state. So that means if you think about like autonomous cars and things like that, that's a great example. Again, the idea that you could simulate autonomous cars driving in the real world in a game engine. Why would you want to do that? All the things that Jason said, you can simulate physics, you can simulate weather, but not only that, you can time travel, because the only way to get the IP, the intelligence you need, may that be prototyping or autonomous cars, whatever it is test all the way through. In a digital world, you control time and space. So you can speed these things up. So iteration includes. So we see this as the metaverse as a term is just bringing together all of those things. That's what the metaverse really means. It's the blending of all of these digital things, worlds, assets. We see everything that we do in the physical world, not just happening in the digital world, but expanding in, if you can imagine, in an infinite space. I describe it sometimes as the hypermarket with an infinite amount of real estate space. It's no anybody with Google can find out in 5 seconds that the predictions are digital assets are going to outpace physical assets thousands to one, without a doubt. And that's just the next couple of years, let alone what in the future. So we see this as a massive business opportunity, because the key to all of it, in my mind, is, and this again comes back to the enablement of what Omniverse has done and where CloudLies have been really successful, is you've got to build these underpinning infrastructures. This is a new city. This is a new way of doing things. It's an infrastructure. If you don't bring together the infrastructure and you don't align it and build it for the future state, it's aged. We all see that in the real world all the time. Infrastructure that was poorly designed and poorly executed doesn't live for very many years, and someone will build a nice new shiny one somewhere else in the world where they've not had to live by their legacy. And that comes from pioneering these things. But we're in a state now where we see the opportunity that if we work together, build the infrastructure, enable the market, that's where the business opportunity is here. And that business opportunity, you mentioned Netflix earlier. Netflix is a great example of where the creative industry has been given an enablement to create infinite amounts of content, good or bad, but either way, infinite amounts of content, which is absolutely revolutionized their business. And it's meant that people can work, again, you think about the metaverse and the idea of Omniverse, collaboratively, creatively, people pick up contracts, drop contracts, move around. But also now in the future, what happens if we start looking at things like AI creating content? Because in this next version of Netflix, the metaverse version of the Netflix, there aren't enough people in the world to create all the content for that. So that's where these kind of things come together. So for us, we see this as getting ahead of the game, pinning the pieces together and being part of this new way of working.
That's great.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's fascinating. So Benny, Kevin talks about the fact that, hey, someone needs to have the infrastructure in order to build this infinite real estate. So can you talk about what CloudLies does and how it enables, let's call them content producers, to have the real estate on which they can build on?
Yeah, sure, Stephen. So I know Kevin now already a few years, and we've been in contact, and they were customers on the CloudLies cloud, and then we started talking about NVIDIA Omniverse, and we realized that the metaverse will need new infrastructure. It will need metaverse infrastructure. And we started now putting our heads together with NVIDIA, and we realized, okay, there's so much possible with Omniverse. Let's look at how we can take existing infrastructure that's already hardware that's out there, and make a fantastic platform out of it, because the public cloud is just too plain vanilla at this point. So for example, Omniverse is RTX enabled. So that means they can use ray tracing, where you simulate individual photons and have a level of realism where you cannot tell the difference anymore between the real world and the virtual world. Even to me, that was shocking. But Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, he gave.
You know what, Benny? I can't let you go by without explaining that further for people who don't know what you're talking about. You're a little, so I guess, so you said that the Omniverse is RTX enabled. Can you just explain what that means?
So that means that you can use this algorithm called ray tracing to render the image in real time. And it's an algorithm that goes back to the fact that you really mimic the behavior of a single photon. And in that way, you have very realistic shadows. It looks realistic. It's just a complicated way of saying that the visuals look like reality, and you cannot tell the difference anymore. And I think it was actually a turning point in human history, this keynote of Jensen, where everybody was fooled. I was looking at it, and I thought this is the real Jensen in his kitchen, but it was not. It was a recording from the metaverse of his kitchen, and everybody was fooled who looked at it. That's the level it's at. And that was even for me a wake-up call, like, my God, this is already at this level. And so to enable this, you need special hardware. For example, in this cloud with Azure Cloud, we're using the latest NVIDIA RTX Ampere 6000 cards that enable that kind of realism. And then we're making the combination between a virtual desktop that has these amazing capabilities, where you then install some applications of Omniverse, because Omniverse exists out of a backend database that we're then putting on the same hardware, but really it's a scalable cluster. So that means you're automatically matching it to the resources it needs, as there are many people that come in, many people that go out again. You need those flexible needs to match, and we match it with top of rack switches that are also NVIDIA Mellanox based, 100 gigabits per second, and we're putting that on super fast storage. So that basically, and we're connecting that, and that's amazing, with DGX resources, so that are optimized to do AI workloads, because AI is very quickly growing in Omniverse. NVIDIA has made all of their platforms and tools compatible with it in Omniverse. And there is this massive opportunity to do training, AI training in Omniverse. And so having this solution where you only need to pay then for the AI power that you need when you're doing the training, all connected in one platform, it's just a massive accomplishment. And it's a totally new infrastructure. Let's call it metaverse infrastructure. And it becomes especially noticeable on very large data sets, where you're having amazing speeds, and data sets will become larger and larger. So that's a word or two about this metaverse infrastructure that we're building. It's quite unique.
And so, I mean, really what you're saying is that the cloud as it stands today is not customized enough for companies, businesses to really, take advantage of all that the Omniverse has to offer. I mean, is that really?
Yeah, so basically the public clouds, they build first, and then afterwards it's a take it or leave it deal. But what we're doing here is first look, okay, what do you specifically want to do with, for example, already specifically Omniverse, and let's find the right set of specs and on a technical level that you need, right? And as I said, we have benchmarks showing a 10x gain in performance cost versus the most comparable thing out there. So what
can you give a couple of examples? Can you just give 2 examples of what you've done for customers where they really benefited from the customization?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a beautiful example here, hosting NVIDIA Omniverse on top of RTX cards that are not available in any public cloud today. So it's actually the first cloud with an RTX card, I think. But please correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. Also the super fast storage that is needed to enable these large data sets, the connection speed between the backend components of Omniverse and the front end components. Those are, to me, the 3 most exciting things, and all of this in a managed cloud where the IT responsible of the environment can obviously with great ease and use automate everything he needs to do for his users. It's the cloud life story is a technical story, but we enable it, the metaverse in the back end, right?
Thank you. There's a lot of talk about digital twins. Can you explain what digital twins are, Jason? Maybe you can explain. And what's unique about Omniverse with relation to digital twins and collaboration, and what becomes possible here with the Omniverse?
Yeah. So a digital twin is exactly what it says. It is a twin of something physical and something in the real world in the digital form. If we consider it almost in reverse, that when we design and create a product, whether that be a car, a house, a city, Today, we create it in a digital environment. We create the digital car first. We do all the design work, all of the components are all assembled in this virtual environment. And then we go and put it into production. So you have a digital twin. And then what we can do with that, and what organizations are beginning to do with that, is continue to use that as their reference point for ongoing development. So instead of starting from scratch each time, they have something virtual to work on. And then bringing this into the Omniverse type environment, into a virtual world, means that it's not just there for, if we take the context of a car, for example, it's not just there for designing the next version of the car, or changing the color and changing the seat interiors and providing options in the sales in the showroom. You've also got a virtual version of that you can train your engineers on. You can teach the mechanic how to take the air conditioning in, how to rebuild the engine, to go all the way down, because every single component is replicated in there in a virtual environment. So that's one example of a digital twin in a manufacturing environment. Now, this could be something like a power tool, it could be a hand drill that has been done, or we scale it all the way up to a car. But then you can also take this into the buildings environment. BIM, Buildings Information Management, is incredibly powerful in managing real estate and managing buildings and real estate. So to be able to manage that, facilities was the word I was looking for there, for managing facilities. So if you've got a virtual environment, a virtual replica of your facilities that you're managing, you can work on changes. You can work on any changes that you're going to make in there, whether you're building an extension, whether you're closing a particular section off and remodeling it, changing an office space layout around. You can work in that, and you can simulate the experience of it and the impact of those changes before you close the office and before you close that building and make the change. Another thing that we've just done, and there's a piece of work that we're doing with Siemens, which we showcased earlier on today, is with their heat recovery steam generators, whereby these are really, really complicated systems, very, very complicated plants. And there's a lot of not just physics going on, but chemistry going on in there as well. And how do they know what's the risk of a particular pipe corroding, or when do we need to shut down to change the heat exchangers, replace valves, what's the expected failure rate? The previous models haven't been very accurate. So they've been doing a lot of repair and maintenance work before it needs to be done, and replacing components that don't need to be replaced. So that's wasteful, inefficient, and costly. So they've taken their steam generators, replicated them, and created a digital twin in Omniverse. They've also taken some other AI technologies for the simulation side of things, and now they're simulating this entire environment. And they estimate they can make $1.7 billion worth of savings in a year from not having inefficiencies around maintenance. And this is huge, from being able to go and simulate something in the virtual world before they can even go and build it in the real world. I mean, there's many other things that we talk about very quickly, and this relates to a question that's in the Q&A section, is WPP, which is a media company based in Europe, and they were part of the video that I showed. They create digital twins of sound stages, movie stages, and they've also created digital twins of forests. So they worked in conjunction with Volvo to create an advert inside Omniverse, and it looks like the car's driving through the forest, when actually it was completely replicated. It was point cloud data that they gathered from drones. They were able to build it in, create a virtual studio, provide virtual backdrops for the vehicle, and to be able to do all of this without taking a car and a crew on site. So huge opportunities there. And it's not just physical buildings and cars that you can simulate or create a digital twin of. It's You can scale this up as much as you want. Ericsson is another example that was in the video. They are creating an entire virtual, have created an entire virtual city, replicated a city inside Omniverse, so they can work out where's the best placement for their cell towers for 5G, not just for the best coverage, but also the best energy efficiency. And what happens when you put more vehicles in there, more people in there, simulating the changes throughout the year and throughout the day, how does it impact their cell coverage? And then in the future, they'll be able to use AI to optimize the placement of those cell towers as well. That's something that we're working on. So digital twin can really be something that scales from something as small as a single device, say a power tool, a hand tool, right the way up to a city, city scale. And everything within that is replicated. But it comes down back to a point that Benny was making, is it all comes back to how much power do you have and how much performance do you have? And so this is what it boils down to from Benny's perspective, is you've got to have the platform, you've got to right size it for it. Otherwise you end up disappointed.
Kevin, how are you guys thinking about digital twins and its application, or where it fits in this new world?
Well, yeah, I'm kind of glad Jason touched on the two most important ones, I think, which is right now the creative industry and the AEC, so the engineering, construction, architect industries. They are by far, right now for me, the ones that are looking at this and seeing the most important question for them is monetization. How do you monetize this? So what we've learned is in a number of aspects of the world, the UK has a pre-competitive agreement between aerospace industries to allow them to develop at pace without having a conflict of interest on individual ownership and IP. Again, think of the metaverse like that. Say we take the steam generating system that Jason was just talking about. We have all of those data points that allow us to predict maintenance, but also predict the effect of steam, hot water on materials. That is IP. You can sell that back to chemical engineering companies. You can trade that with supply companies. You can put that back into the supply chain, into the manufacturing industry to optimize everything that's part of that industry. So monetization, people need to think about businesses as not locked cupboards and hidden archives of that's where all the money is, right? So unlocking all of that data, sharing that data in a marketplace that allows you this ubiquitous interconnectivity, that's the monetization. Now, one of the questions in the chat is clearly, we're going to make money building this. How does everyone else make money? But it's exactly the same with the Netflix example. It's exactly the same with Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all these things. These are platforms. The opportunity is this huge democratization of wealth that will come from these platforms, from people thinking about it. I know small SME businesses right now who are thinking about how they take their tiny little application that they've delivered between 2 or 3 people and how they then put that onto a global stage. The metaverse is what will do that. Integration, connecting into things like Omniverse, being compatible. One of the other things someone has said is, do you need to be all on the same platform to make this work? Not necessarily, no. It just has to be interoperable. That's the key here, is to make sure that there is some base common platform, some common medium that everyone can work from, and there'll always be changes at each end. So for us, that's where we see this, as a company, why it's worth us investing time and effort into exploring this and to building this platform, because ultimately, if we can position ourselves as a metaverse or part of a metaverse or a virtual world, an industry specific one, maybe something more specific to what we do as a group of companies, then at least we're controlling our own destiny. That's kind of point number one. If you're not in it, you're not going to control it. So it's better to get in and understand it. And you see a lot of creative companies doing that already. You see a lot of work from the connector companies with people like NVIDIA and Omniverse, and people hosting their software applications on cloud lines like Autodesk and Unreal and things like this, that you see that they're the ones making the step forward now. And we're making sure that we're there with it so that we can be part of this monetization.
Benny, how are your clients leveraging digital twins?
Yeah, so as most of our customers are in cut-heavy sectors such as architecture, engineering, construction, but also manufacturing, what we see happening here as a first and most obvious step is to use Omniverse as the CDE, the common data environment. And because it's compatible with already nearly all CAD applications, GIS applications, and you can be working in real time, you and me, you on your own application, me on my own application with my existing licenses, and the single source of truth will very soon shift to Omniverse. So today there is already a sync between what is called a BIM model and other tools and with Omniverse, but we see this happening that pretty soon we will have this utopian vision in reality where the single source of truth will be in Omniverse, and that digital twin will live for the duration as the physical good lives in the real world, maybe even longer, and it will enable all kinds of new uses on top of it. So to go a step further, this is a very sensitive point already in these CAD industries. Everybody, every designer, every engineer doesn't want to switch softwares. People are used to working in and are good to in working in their preferred software package. Already being able just with different organizations to work together in a project, even if it's the same software, you might be on different versions. To just be able to keep people on their version that they are today, it's a big win. And there's so much time and effort that is wasted in these cut-heavy industries today in making data formats compatible, that in itself, that pain falls away. It's a huge source of value creation. So it also means that if we're working together in Omniverse, a change that we make is immediately seen in other softwares as well. So Omniverse has this, is using this Pixar's universal scene description technology, which enables this. And this means that you are augmenting the productivity of teamwork here, versus as you're working in parallel, versus having to work sequentially. And time is money, of course. So you achieve so much savings, your time to market can be decreased considerably. Also think about the errors that happen in the design processes today. So if you decrease those numbers of errors, and then the engineering change orders, the ECOs, as they say, that to remediate them, it also means that these ECOs become shorter. You have less ECOs, you have safer products. Safer products, in the end, they save lives in society. So and these models, as Jason was saying, they're becoming bigger and bigger. BOMs, bill of materials, are becoming so big that today no single computer can hold them anymore. And so what they do is they split up the models, and then afterwards you need to reconnect all these models together, and it's quite the pain, and you have so many issues. So being able to just having a single larger model is in itself a major innovative step. So, and then on top of that comes things like 5G. We are having, for example, an exciting partnership with a 5G provider to stream directly to a 5G ready VR headset or AR headset. And Omniverse is already compatible with that because of NVIDIA Cloud XR technology. So that means that the threshold, the hurdle to access these environments are seriously reduced, where you will have 5G coverage. And on top of that, we've developed other sexy things, such as, for example, a one-click app streaming service. So that means that any application you create in Omniverse, and that's the beauty of Omniverse, you can create your own applications. You can share with other people for a quick sneak preview of what you're doing in Omniverse in a safe and secure way by only sharing a URL that links back to the Cloud Lives platform. So basically, from your smartphone, from an old computer, from any connected device, you just click on the link and you're having this amazing a real-time ray trace supported supercomputer cloud streamed experience that looks like the real thing.
So that is, I guess that's one way where the SME market, these small businesses, can take advantage and get in the game, so to speak, and be part of the metaverse and the omniverse.
Oh,
right?
Everybody, absolutely. You don't need to be a big corporation to start with Omniverse and take. Even a single person can start with Omniverse, and that's the beauty of the NVIDIA model here as well, that they enable this. You're only limited, I would say, by your own creativity as your team and your organization. But it's just a discussion you need to start get going within your organizations so that your creativity within your organizations can bubble up and that you're talking about the right things with the right people.
Can you guys talk about digital currency and how digital currency is going to play a role in a business-to-business environment in the metaverse and the omniverse?
Yeah,
Jason?
well, from our
Yeah,
I mean, from our perspective, I mean, like we said all the way through, there's many different ways to think about the metaverse in the way it connects and collaborates, and people collaborate in different ways. On the consumer space, clearly, cryptocurrency, decentralized, but also we're talking about things now in the future that maybe we haven't foreseen, such as bartering, trading, IP for IP. NFTs are at the start of that, but more specific personalized versions that you can genuinely barter and trade. Businesses will, I believe, work in more of a collaborative space as well, shared IP. You think about things, so how do things, because someone's made a comment about how close are we and what the hurdles here. Okay, so what's going to enable all of this is AI, because this is massive. This is way out of the realms of what humans can possibly comprehend or pin together. So the only way to control all of this data, these marketplaces, these interactions, all of these things that we've been talking about, is ultimately AI. AI is going to do that. So how far and how close are we? Well, already today exists AI contract systems that will do smart contracts between two binding parties, will agree terms and conditions, will author and DD all of those terms and conditions and bind a contract in a blockchain. Now that exists today. So how are people going to trade? There you go. There's the answer. People are going to trade in a format like that. What they barter or what they pay with or what that currency will be, well, I think that's going to be flexible. And that's going to be flexible based on, and I'm talking from a perspective of what I can see now, but we are, as I've said at the beginning, the metaverse is a stateless environment potentially. There will need to be, someone's mentioned regulation. Of course, there's going to have to be regulation, but regulation is dictated usually by physical borders. We're now into a new world where no one's written the rule book for this, just as they didn't for when social media hit the market. So to answer or not answer the question, I think that the execution format will be things like smart contract control by AI, bringing people together, binding contracts instantaneously, making IP management a much easier task and allowing more IP and more royalty type programs to exist on a global basis. The currency itself, no idea. No idea on that one.
Jason?
I think, Kevin's made the point of trying to predict what that currency will be, or even if there is going to be one particular currency, is, that's a really difficult thing to predict. And I don't think any of us can. We're all seeing what happens in the crypto space, but I would suspect that everything, and I would anticipate that everything will be built around blockchain in one form or another, because that gives us the integrity to the process and the control of the process. And then you have AI around managing the process itself. So that's there. But then also we look at this, and this is the opportunity. This is the opportunity for organizations and for very agile and creative organizations to bring something new to the market. If we look back to the creation of the internet and we started building on HTML, we could not have known where we were going to be today. In the early 90s, mid 90s, we would not have known where we were going to be 25, 26 years later and what we would have built. If any of us would have sat down then and predicted things like Facebook or TikTok or even Amazon it's you know, I don't think we could have done. It was a completely different world, and that's where we are today with these the metaverse and virtual worlds. We are right at the beginning. I think we learned the lesson from the internet boom and the internet growth, that the potential to grow is exponential. But where we can go, we can only predict based on our experiences so far. Somebody is going to come up with something incredible that we never even dreamt of, and it's going to happen. And they're going to bring it.
Help everyone understand, though. You know, obviously, the internet was such a Herculean change in all aspects of commerce. So I just want to give everyone the opportunity to truly understand, why is the metaverse and omniverse going to be as equally a big change?
It's a new opportunity. It's a new market space. It is the brave new world into which we step into. And some people have been in this type of virtual world for some time. Let's take something like Epic Games and Fortnite. Billions of dollars being generated from virtual assets and virtual assets, and billions are being created there. The same in a number of environments like that. So if we look at that and then see how that can scale up and scale out, not just in consumer space, but also moving into the enterprise space as well, it's really is going to be the next untapped opportunity to go into. And as Kevin was saying, is if you're generating IP within your virtual environment in your metaverse, for your industry, and you've got the opportunity to go and monetize that contractually and sell it through, then it becomes what's the framework to put those contracts in place. And I think this comes to another question that somebody asked in the chat is, for it to be successful, for the metaverse, omniverse to be successful in the future, does it need to be built on one platform? And I would say it doesn't have to be built on one platform, but we need to build them interoperably. So if we look, again, go back to the internet is built around HTML and then various iterations of HTML through there. There have been various organizations that have tried to build proprietary platforms that have sat on top of that or sat alongside it, but they don't last for very long because they lack that interoperability and the ability for people to extend them and develop and interact with them. So they fall by the wayside. And I think this is what we're trying to do here. This is why we chose USD, being this open source platform for 3D environments, as the foundation to build on, because it's open, it's extensible. People can go and build their own platforms, and then we can start to interconnect and share and collaborate between the two. And I think that's where we'll get to. And we said this right at the beginning. There won't be, I don't think there'll be one virtual world or one virtual environment, one metaverse, one omniverse. There'll be lots of these virtual environments, and some of them will be private and ring fenced, and some of them will be created to interact and share with others. And that's those shared environments. That's where I think our biggest opportunity for monetization comes from, because trade across borders, whether they be physical or virtual, is what creates opportunity.
Yeah, I think just to answer that, one of the things that we kind of wrote this down when we very first looked at the metaverse idea a few years ago, and this coming from someone at a very large commodities market background, who said the internet allows you to exchange, communicate, trade, but we've now sold all the physical things in the world 1,000 times over. So welcome to the new world of selling all the things we haven't invented yet, and this is the digital world. So it gives us so you want to know why this is bigger than the internet? It's because the internet only allowed us to trade what was right in front of us. Now we can create endless supplies of things to trade, sell, monetize. So this is going to be so much bigger.
Kevin, because we're not selling physical things now. We're selling ideas, right?
Ideas.
I mean,
Yeah, so I was thinking that you're also increasing the economic participation. In the real world, you're limited by geographic distances, by all kinds of rules. But in the metaverse, you can collaborate literally with everybody who has an internet connection. So first of all, your economic participation degree is larger on an unimaginable massive scale. Second of all, it goes much further than just a 3D virtual world and collaboration. It's about things we talked about here in this webinar. It's about AI, digital twins, and being able to simulate that. It's about having knowledge of the future. What about that we make a digital twin about our human body? We connect all the data to it that we already have, and we have knowledge about how our human body is going to, be affected in the future somehow. How valuable is that? How much business models can you derive from that? Well, it's an enormous potential, right?
And that actually relates to a couple of the questions in the chat around healthcare and how does this allow for collaboration? And I think we saw this with COVID, and we actually took some of the research data from early stages of the COVID virus, and we turned it into visual data so that people could visualize the interaction of the virus with cells so they could understand better. Instead of having huge amounts of data that is sitting inside a supercomputer that 5 people on the planet can understand, you can take that and turn it into visual representations and visual information that lots more people can understand, lots more people can collaborate with. And a lot of things like that is about connecting those people that will have the insight and the creative insight to go, I know how to solve this. I can see what's happening here. And then to be able to do that. And this is what, going beyond it, just simply buying and selling virtual assets and digital assets, this is the opportunity for the creation of what comes next, the development of what comes next, whether it be in chemistry, whether it be in drug discovery, whether it be in healthcare, like Benny says. If you can simulate a body, we have the Human Brain Project and the various genome projects going on now. Because if you can simulate that and visualize it, some people can work very scientifically from paper data. Other people have to see physical models. They have to see a body. They have to see the blood pumping around and be able to interact with that. So this is the opportunity, a further opportunity there. And we've already seen partners developing VR, AR, and simulated surgery training as well. So leveraging this to educate, using this tool to teach people. And I think that was also another question in there is, we've got this information, we've got these assets. Not everybody is lucky enough to be in a location where they can go and learn a subject by interacting with whatever it is they're physically interacting with, whether it be car mechanics, whether it's nuclear science and nuclear physics, building a reactor and maintaining a reactor, working on a submarine, all these kind of things. Not everybody gets the opportunity to do that. If you can learn in a virtual environment, you're giving opportunities and bringing skills to people that would not necessarily have been able to gain access to them. Now, there's an opportunity to monetize that, but there's also an opportunity to bring new skills to new people in the market that wouldn't have had access to that in the past. And then we elevate the knowledge of the planet. We elevate the skills of the planet, and we democratize. I think it was Kevin who mentioned it earlier on. It's the democratization of data. We have that to some extent with the internet, but now to be able to learn physical skills in a virtual environment, that's a fantastic opportunity.
Right. Callie, why don't we go to some audience questions, if you don't mind?
Sure. They actually answered a lot of them. I've been tracking it. Fine. So, so one of the questions is, are there any anticipated negative impacts on an individual not being able to distinguish reality from virtual, and where do you think that could lead to mental health issues?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So, we've done one of the charities I work with have done a lot of work on this because they work with younger children and from difficult backgrounds. And yes, absolutely. There's no two ways about it. Changes to human society will have mental health. However, conversely, what we learned through COVID is telemedicine is not the answer, but it's an answer to the problem, being able to get the expert to the person at the right time all the time. So yeah, it has its pros and cons like everything in life, but thanks to the good people in this world, they will find a way to assist, help with these circumstances. And again, that goes back to the same with social media and things like that. It's taken a number of years for the negative side of things to be found out and for people to put in plans to mitigate. Similarly, it will happen in whatever it is. But also there's two schools of thoughts around the virtual world piece as well. If you look at a recent announcement by the guys who built Pokemon, the Niantic guys, the demonization of VR and things like that. Well, there is some logic in that. But virtual reality is very good for some people, not for others. As augmented reality is good for it's depends on your personality type and the way you are as an individual. But like I said, I think the good thing is that with all these things, they will create more connections. People will be able to connect with more people. Hopefully, that will mitigate some of this problem.
Okay, thank you. And what roles, if any, will the governments play?
Who wants to answer that?
I was thinking that's for the governments to decide, isn't it? It's been an interesting one, and we've seen this around social media platforms as well. I think they're learning how to react and how to respond to it, and you can be either very draconian and very restrictive on it, or very open. And it's about finding the balance. And I think different governments will handle this in different ways, but it's incredibly difficult to predict how a government will react to this type of technology into an environment which is effectively borderless.
Yeah.
Thank you. You speak of democratization. How about emerging markets where masses may not even have access to technology?
So from my perspective, I'm actually working in a lot of emerging markets with the cloud-based technology with NVIDIA because of the pioneering legacy infrastructure in some of our developed nations. They don't have that. They're more advanced in a lot of emerging nations than we are in terms of radio communication networks and 5G, 4G, 3G. A lot of the optimization work that's being done with things like the cloud light stack and NVIDIA compression to allow these things, we're actually able to stream a 50, 60, 100,000 pound supercomputing environment straight to someone's laptop over 3G, sat in the outskirts of like Kenya or Rwanda, right? So because they have those networks. So if anything, going back to Jason's point, this will create democratization by nature. But obviously, you do need their governments and the local nations to put in some of that infrastructure to get to that point.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would say this technology is leveling the playing field, and it's this inventive step of streaming pixels versus streaming a model, because obviously your pixel stream is going to have far less demands on your network versus streaming model data, and so emerging markets with less sophisticated infrastructure can still leverage high-end technologies by going to streaming pixels. And it also increases the security. You cannot reconstruct a model from backwards from the pixels you've received, right? So it also increases security.
Okay, thank you. Will DAOs rule the omniverse metaverse? Anyone?
I think that comes back to the government question of, I don't know. I think it's early to predict. I think it's
I think control is the wrong word. Because ultimately, the thing we've learned with all of these decentralized environments is if one person doesn't, if a group of people don't like it, they'll create another one. So it's, I don't think it's a control mechanism. So I think control probably is the wrong word. Obviously, depending on how baked in it is to certain systems and profiles, just like currency is today, that will dictate the trade route and the mechanism.
Okay, and one last question. Can you share your favorite real-life examples of businesses, consumers taking advantage of the Metaverse, Omniverse? And are there some projects on the horizon that you're really excited about?
For me, there's tons. So I'm a gamer at heart. so I could talk about this all night for me. But you know, the fact that even Fortnite existed was a great thing. Roblox, unfortunately, I wish I'd bought shares. My kids spend a lot of money in Roblox. You know, but I see the good and bad in these things. I spend a lot of time with them to understand these worlds, and I am genuinely excited for the ability to do for what the Metaverse represents in terms of the cross-border trade, the democratization, or the education, being able to really help and open up the minds of people. But I'm also really excited to see what the next kind of iteration of Niantic come out with the extended reality. I like augmented reality and extended reality. For me, that's where my money is.
I think for me that the most exciting one is one that came from just earlier today, is the plan to build a virtual model of the planet and to use it for predicting and addressing climate change, and to be able to then bring this into the Omniverse so that we can fix the problems that we have today. And I think that's a huge task. But it's huge and it's exciting. I can also go to the other extreme of something that I find incredibly interesting is fusion reactors, and to be able to simulate those. And I know of a couple of projects which I probably spend a little bit too much time getting involved in, just because it's exciting and it's interesting and it's something that piques my interest. And both of those come to the same result of reducing carbon production, improving the climate, cleaner and better energy for the planet. So those are the sorts of things that I get excited about before even stepping into the consumer space.
Yeah, and to build on what Jason said, for me it's also about the biggest impact things, which are obviously climate change and making that more real and more tangible for people with Omniverse, but then also by linking AI to it, and that's what we're doing with Azure Cloud, and having this opportunity to, through simulation, to save CO2, to save water, to build a better planet for everybody by use of technology, and that's super exciting, seeing that technology having bigger impacts as technology matures.
Well, thank you, everyone. And our time is up. For everyone in the audience, if you want to connect with anyone here, everyone here has my email. You can send me an email and I can make an introduction. I will also be sending everyone out a link to our website with the recording of this that you will be able to access as well. And I want to thank everyone for joining. And if anyone has any last words out to the audience, the floor is yours.
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you very much. I greatly appreciate you guys being on this panel. You've educated us all and given us a ton to think about. So we can't thank you enough. And everybody have a great day.